Welcome to the Living a Nordic Life podcast, where we explore a simpler, cosier and more intentional life the Nordic way. I'm Fiona McKenna, your Nordic living guide and founder of Living a Nordic Life, where I share all things Nordic living and show you that a Nordic life is the way to bring intentional calm and healthy habits into your own life, wherever you are in the world. Are you looking for ways to bring simplicity, coziness and calm into your life? Well, let me show you how. Visit the Living a Nordic Life website to explore how I can help you on your journey to simple, healthy and happy calm, the Nordic way. You can subscribe to the podcast right here. And if you want regular inspirational emails sent with love from Norway and straight to your inbox, don't forget to subscribe to the Living a Nordic Life newsletters. And so now let's dive into our episode. Every time I write an article about schools and kindergartens in Norway, I get loads of response and lots of discussions, which are great. It's really exciting. And I know it's something that people like to talk about. They like to read about and maybe speculate about quite a lot. So today I want to talk to you about what you could expect when your child starts first grade in Norway. Now, you don't necessarily have to have a child in Norway. Maybe you're just interested. Or perhaps, like me, you're a foreigner who's come to Norway and it's the first time that your child starts school and you really want to know about it. So, although it's Christmas when I'm recording this, just coming up to Christmas, and I've written loads and loads of articles about Christmas in the Nordics and cosy Christmas times and Nordic seasonal recipes and all that kind of stuff, I thought it would be a little bit refreshing to take a break from the norm and share this podcast episode with you. Mia, my youngest, who's 6, started first grade in August. And like I said, I felt that if you're new to Norway, a foreigner here, or simply interested in how school works in the Nordics, this might be for you. Why not? As a parent of a child just starting school, you're really nervous, aren't you? It's all new, and you worry that your little one's going to cope. How are they going to cope? It's frightening for them, and they don't understand everything. So to have any kind of reassurance is good, and especially if maybe Norwegian is not your first language, or perhaps it is and you still don't know what happens in first grade. Or you're new to the country, or you're an expat and you've come here and you might only be here for a few years. What can you expect? So I hope I can offer a little bit of reassurance and quell any anxiety you might have about your child starting school in Norway and help you understand what you can expect. So first of all, the first thing that I learned was you have to ask. You have to ask everything. It seems to be kind of assumed here that you will know everything. And information is not always offered. I find that with a lot of things. So I ask an awful lot of questions. And that is how I've found the best way to get through these things. And the best way to get all the information that you need is to just keep asking. And although the information isn't offered, when you ask, it's always greeted really pleasantly. Everybody's patient. Nobody seems to get irritable with the constant questions, because I'm always asking questions about everything. And some of the questions might seem a little bit idiotic, I have to say, but they're not treated like that. They're treated with patience and understanding, and I get all the answers straight away. But I do find that I have to ask. And it seems with school that a lot of the other parents seem to know. Maybe because they've got nephews and nieces, or perhaps, they're young anyway, and it was not that long since they were at school, or just because they talk to a lot of other people and they just know. You probably find that if you think about it, you probably find that that's the same in the country where you live, that you just know, don't you? It's discussed and you kind of absorb it and you just understand it. But if you're taken and you're put somewhere else, what do you know? You have to ask the questions. So, ask. The next thing I discovered was that it is very good to have your child in kindergarten the year before they start first grade. I think this is quite important. And kindergarten's a funny one here in Norway because children can actually start at barnehage the year that they turn 1. And lots of people do. There aren't very many who do not have their children at kindergarten. And Andrea and I decided that we wanted to keep Mia at home for a little bit because we probably weren't going to have any more children. And there was a bit of an age gap between her and Millie and Brendan, who are the other two, who are teenagers. And we thought it would be nice to have her at home for a little while. And then lockdown happened as well. So we didn't really have very much choice. But I was asked a lot, which kindergarten is she at? This was when she was about 2 years old. And then if I said she wasn't, why not? And it was difficult to explain that I was a stay-at-home mum and I didn't really need to have her at kindergarten. I wanted to have her with me. But it is useful to have your child at kindergarten from 5 years old because they start school in Norway from 6. Should have explained that, shouldn't I? School in Norway starts from 6 up to 16. So the year that they turn 6, that August is when they start grade 1. And they will stay at primary school, which is barneskole, until grade 7. And at the end of grade 7, they then go up to ungdomsskole, which is like the equivalent of, I suppose, junior high school or senior school, if you're in the UK. Anyway, we're talking about kindergarten, aren't we? It's useful for them to be at kindergarten for a year because although it's not as structured as school is, there is some structure there. And the focus is very much on play. If you want to read or listen a little bit more about kindergarten in Norway, I've recorded another podcast, so you can have a look at that one. It's quite a long way back. I think it's about episode 16. But also on my blog, if you want to have a look at that too. But it's a gentle way to introduce them to some kind of structure. The hours are not the same. It's open. Usually kindergartens are open from about 7:30 in the morning till about 4:30 in the afternoon. But you can take your children really whenever you want them to go. They like to know when they're coming and when they're leaving, but there's not the structure that there is with school. And because the focus is very much on play, it's very relaxed. And you can go and you can stay with your child for the first couple of days that they start kindergarten. It's very gentle. But there's the structure there ready for them for when they go up to school. And the kindergartens are usually linked to the schools in some way. So the children that are at that particular kindergarten will be going to the closest school. In our case, it's our tiny little village school in our village well, it's not a tiny school, actually, I have to say. For a village our size, it is quite a big school. But our village is small. It's about 1,000 inhabitants, but it serves all the villages around. And some of the children travel quite a long way. It might take them 20 minutes or half an hour on the bus to get to school. But it's a beautiful new school. And it is built right next to the kindergarten. So the two feel like they're one and the same, even though they're run separately and they are separate buildings. And there's a fence between them so that the little ones can't escape into the school. But yeah, it's very useful. And when it comes to starting school for the children who are coming up to 6 or maybe are already 6 that year, they're taken by the kindergarten teachers on a specific day to meet their teachers. And they spend the day there at school and they get to see what their classroom is like and everything starts to become a little more familiar. But also the parents are invited too. This is before the summer holiday. So you have some reassurance of what things are going to be like. And you go along with your child and you spend most of the day there at school with them. You don't leave. You stay with them and you go into the classroom and you look at their classroom with them and they play and they do a little bit of learning. They meet the other children because they're not all from the same kindergarten, or some of them might not even have been to kindergarten. And it gives you a chance to meet the teachers as well and some of the other parents. And that way, not only is your child reassured, but you are too. And it's a lovely way to introduce people to the school. It's not something that I was used to with my older two who started school in England. And although it was a village school, again, it was certainly very much smaller, we didn't really have the reassurance that things were going to be okay. And there was a lot of crying, I have to say too, because they were very uncertain, especially with my oldest, who was very uncertain about what school was going to be like. Here, you just don't seem to see the crying. The children are happy and confident, and they know what to expect, and it's all laid out for them. So nothing is unfamiliar. There's going to be some crying, I guess, but certainly we've not experienced it, not even at kindergarten. Parents are encouraged to stay, and it's all very gentle. And if the children do cry, the adults aren't afraid to give them a hug, which I like, I have to say. You want to know that if your little one is upset, that their teacher, who they like, is going to give them a cuddle and say everything's going to be okay. At the beginning of the school year, they also have, this is with all the grades actually, they have a parents' meeting where you go along and you learn about the system that they use for homework and the system of messaging, because everything is electronic here. We don't send notes in. We don't very often phone either. We usually send an email on a specific app. I'll tell you about that in a minute. It's brilliant. But we learn about that. We learn about how the school year is going to be structured, how they're going to teach, the way in which they're going to teach. Plus, there's a little bit of social time, if you like, a bit of time spent being sociable with the other parents. So you get to meet the other parents, and maybe parents of children that your child has started to make friends with, or parents who you've not met before, and it creates a sense of community, which is lovely. The children are given, when they start first grade, they are given another child to help them, not given, but they are assigned another child to help them make that transition into school. And when they have their meeting with school and their visit to school before the summer holidays with their kindergarten, this is when they meet their carers, or school cousins, they call them, who are going to take care of them. And it's a child who's in 4th grade, and they very carefully pick children who are compatible with these little ones who are starting. And it's usually a group of 2 or 3 older children, and then a group of 2 or 3 younger children from grade 1, together in these little groups. And they do, in the first few weeks, they do an awful lot of things together. They go on hikes together. This is in school time. This is not out of school. We do that here as well. I'll tell you about that as well in a minute. They do hikes together. They do activities together. They play games together. The older children will read to them. And if they're worried or they're frightened or they have nobody to play with, they have one of these older children who's looking out for them in recess and in playtimes. It's lovely. About learning. Kindergarten is very much, like I said, focused on play here, whereas school is very much focused on learning, and there is learning right from the beginning. So unless you've been teaching your child at home, at kindergarten they're not really taught any kind of structured learning, I have to say. They're taught how to get on with each other, how to play together, how to be sociable, and how to sort out conflicts as well. It's very important. But there isn't any kind of structured learning as such. But at school, it starts right from the word go. And I have to say, it's fairly speedy. It's not pushed. There's no pressure. But it does move quickly. Much quicker than I would expect, actually. But the kids seem to soak it up, and they're absolutely, because they've not been doing it at kindergarten, they're absolutely ready for it. They really, really want to learn. And it's a year or a couple of years later than they start school in England and the UK, for example, where they start just as they're coming up to 4. In fact, mine started preschool much earlier than that, 2 years, 9 months, which now I think, gosh, that's very early. But at the time, I felt they were ready. But yeah, the learning is very quick. And they are expected to do a little bit of homework at home. It's not a lot. It's just reading and doing a little bit of work for about 15-20 minutes every couple of days. It's not a huge amount. And as parents, we are asked to read to them every day. 15 minutes of reading every day. And I know that reading to your child is one of the best things that you can do with them. If you don't do any other homework, if you don't do anything else, reading with them is the best thing that you can do. When they get to the autumn holiday in their first grade, which is about 2 months after they've started school, they are given iPads. Every child is given either an iPad or a computer here in Norway, and it is funded by the school or by the commune. I'm not quite sure how the funding goes, so don't quote me on that. I'd have to look that up. But every child is given a computer or a laptop. They get iPads up until I think it's grade 4, but certainly from grade 1. And then beyond that, they're given a laptop. They're either reconditioned that have been used in the school previously, or they're brand new. And both of my older ones have been given brand new computers. And they have this all the way through their time at that particular school. If they leave and they go to another school, they get another one there, right from the start. And it's funded by the school. As parents, we're asked to sign a form to say if the computer gets damaged, then we'll pay a small fee of 500 NOK, which is about $50, which in the grand scheme of things is not a huge amount of money, is it, considering how much a laptop is, which is considerably more than that. And the kids tend to take care of them. They get headphones as well, little headphones, and a case to put it in. And they take care of it, and they have it the whole time, unless it breaks. They take it home in the evenings, and they take it home during the holidays as well. So they always have it there to do their homework on. And the little ones, they keep their iPads at school. I think they're kept in, some kind of locked case, and they bring them out at certain times. They're not on them all the time. But they start to learn to use a device. And it gently leads them into using a computer where they will be doing all their schoolwork. Now, I've got mixed feelings about this, I have to say, because on one hand, the positive side of this, I think it's wonderful that we live in a country where they can afford to give children computers. I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? Some places they can't even afford books. And here we are, computers for every child. And it does make life easy when it comes to doing homework and the schoolwork. Everything is centralised through a particular app and some programs called Visma, which is where we send messages to the teachers, and we can look at what the kids are doing, and we can look at their grades, and the kids can do the same thing. And the children use a system called Socrates, which teaches them, and FIDA, and that's another one as well. It has all their schoolwork on it, so they can look at everything, they can complete all their schoolwork, and the teachers can mark it directly from there immediately if they want to. And also, if there's a problem, they can message the teacher, so they can message the teachers in the afternoons, evenings, at weekends. It's up to the teachers if they reply, but in my experience they do. And everything there is centralised, and it's very organised, so nothing is getting lost, and there's not a huge amount of paper being used. On the negative side, they spend an awful lot of time in front of a screen. Every single lesson, apart from something like music or PE, physical education, everything is spent in front of a screen. So when they get a little bit older, that can be the entire school day. And then, of course, they're coming home and they want to look at their phones and text their friends and maybe do some gaming, that kind of thing. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of time spent looking at either a small screen or a big screen. And for a normal child, I say normal, kind of neurotypical child, let's say, for the average child, that's bad enough. But if you have a neurodivergent child, a neuroatypical child, it's really quite bad. Because these kind of things, looking at a screen all the time, amplifies whatever it is they've got. And it makes them tired and irritable, and you start to see things coming out that you thought maybe, we can get a grip on that, or they can get a grip on it. And it's not ideal, I have to say. So you really have to be on top of how much time they're spending in front of a screen. It's important. First grade, the days are much shorter. That's nice for your little one, because they're tired, aren't they? The days are fairly short in Norway anyway for school. They start at around about 8:30, and they usually finish by about 2 o'clock. I think it might be different in certain parts, and it's certainly different in the far north of Norway, where in the winter, there are much shorter daylight hours. So the children start later, and I think they finish earlier as well. They must do an awful lot of work at home. I don't know the exact details of it, but I do know this. But here in Vestfold, they start at 8:30 and they finish at 2:05. Apart from Mondays, where the little ones finish at 12:15. And Monday is a lovely day because they spend the entire day outside. It's outdoor school day. They don't even go inside when they arrive. It doesn't matter what the weather is. It can be freezing cold and chucking it down with rain. They will still be outside. So they have to be prepared for that. And they go off and they build a fire, campfires. They learn what it's like to live in the old days. Iron Age families is what Mia is doing. Mia is playing on a Monday. They love it. They make things. They cook things. They cook soup and hot chocolate and porridge. And they sit around together and they all eat that outside. But it's a short day. It finishes at 12:15. Tuesdays finish at 2:05. Wednesdays is an early day for everybody. They finish again at 12:15. And then on Fridays, they finish at 1:35. So it's nice short days. And especially at the end of the week when they're tired, aren't they? You know, I can't imagine they can get much out of them on a Friday. But it's an early day. As they get older, the days get a little bit longer. But it's never longer than 2:05. Unless your child is in after school club, which is something called SFO here, and every school has to provide that. It's a club for, I say club, it's just that it's a group of children who are supervised by adults. Some of them are teachers, some are teaching assistants, for as many hours as you need. In first grade, they get 12 hours a month free, which is nice, isn't it? If you're working, that's brilliant. And it goes on till 4:30. And also it starts at 7:30. So your children can go there first thing in the morning if you have to go to work. And then they can stay a little bit later after school if you're working late every day. And you know that they're safe and supervised. And they seem to love SFO. They do all sorts of fun things. They spend a lot of time outside. They play. There's no learning or teaching or structure. They just do what they want. But they're in a supervised environment. And they get something to eat as well. Something that Mia's teachers are doing, which I think is great, and I've talked to some of the other parents, and it doesn't seem like anybody else is doing this, but I wish that it would catch on, because I think when my first older children, can't spit it out, when my older children started school, I think this would have been very useful, and it was something called a vennegrupper, friend groups. And what the teachers have done is they have looked at the class and they've put together groups of 4 to 6 children and then sent a message home to us parents. They haven't actually physically put them together. They've just decided these people will go in groups. Mixture of boys and girls. Sent a message home to us parents with who's in which group and asked us to organise friend meetings once a month. So we're given a specific month for our child. And what we do is we organise some kind of activity. Stuff doesn't need to be anything fancy, usually for about an hour and a half, and the parents have to come along as well. So it's your child and you. Go to whoever it is who's hosting this, and it could be at their house, it could be in the play park, it could be in the forest, at the beach, it could be wherever you decide you want to have it when it's your turn. And you invite the others, and everybody gets together. And it's a chance for the children to play with children who they might not necessarily be playing with in the classroom during the day. But also it's a chance for you parents or us parents, to meet up and get to know each other a little bit. And the idea of it is that the children then start to forge friendships outside their friendship groups or their natural friendship groups within the class. And if there's any kind of conflict or any kind of issue, it's much easier to sort out when the parents actually know each other than if it's a complete stranger. And there is conflict, let's not pretend there isn't. Everything is not always perfect, although it seems like maybe it could be here, and everything seems great. There is conflict. I'm not going to go into that here now. I might record another podcast about that if anybody's interested. Send me a message if you think that would be something that you'd be interested in, because not everything is perfect. And when it does come to conflicts and issues, there are very specific ways of dealing with it, of which I am sorry to say we have a lot of experience. But certainly not at Barnaschooler, where everything has been wonderful. It's our particular one, we've been very lucky, is really lovely. Another thing you need to be prepared for, this is the last thing I'm going to talk about actually. Another thing you need to be prepared for when your child starts first grade is the number of clothes they need at school. And this is Norway generally when it comes to kids at school. They need a huge amount of clothes. When they start kindergarten, you have a list of clothes that they need. It's enormous. Extra socks, extra t-shirts, extra pants in case there's a little accident, waterproof clothes, woolen undergarments, hats, gloves, scarf, cowl, normal shoes, indoor shoes, because nobody wears shoes inside here. You probably know that. Even kids at school, they take their shoes off and they put indoor shoes on. They have to wear indoor shoes in case the fire alarm goes, and then they can go outside and they've got something on their feet at least. But all the clothes that they need, and the same applies in a slightly lesser extent, but to school. They have a cloakroom where they get changed, and all the clothes and everything stay out of the classroom. They don't even take their bags into the classroom. Everything stays outside, and everybody has a little cubby with somewhere to hang your clothes, somewhere to put your indoor shoes, a little cupboard that you put your clothes in. And what they normally have is a change of clothes in case they get wet, because that happens because they're outside at every recess. Unless the weather is below minus 15 degrees centigrade, when it's considered maybe a little bit too cold, they're outside. If it's chucking it down with rain, they're outside. If it's windy, they're outside. You know, there has to be a natural disaster for Norwegian kids to be inside. So they need a change of clothing. They need to have a coat, depending on the weather as well, because we have winter coats, summer coats, autumn and spring coats. Everything has to be different. And if it's winter, then they're going to have something bulky, like a snowsuit, which is waterproof but also padded inside, so it keeps them nice and warm. And if the weather is a little bit warmer, they will not have a snowsuit, but they will have waterproofs. So that's waterproof trousers that normally have like, I want to say stirrups, but things over the shoulder, elastic over the shoulder to keep them on, and a waterproof coat, and wellies or winter boots, and hat, gloves, scarves, all these kind of things for the day that go into this little cupboard. And then they also have to have indoor shoes, because they're not allowed to wear their outdoor shoes inside. They take everything off. So if it's wet and dirty, it stays in the cloakroom, and everything else goes, or whatever else they're wearing can go inside. They have to wear their indoor shoes inside, because then they're not running about in their socks. So you have to be prepared for this, which I have to say, when kindergarten started, I wasn't quite. So, oh my goodness, what do we need? I had to take pictures of everything that Mia needed to have for kindergarten. I had some idea, because you can go to the clothes shops where the little ones, where you shop for little ones, like the baby shops, and you can buy kindergarten packs, and it will be everything that they need. So all these kind of spare clothes and hats and things like that. But for school, it's not quite so much, but it's definitely worth having 2 of everything, I've discovered, because they do get very wet, and especially their gloves and hats and cowls can get really soggy and wet. So it's worth having a spare, because they don't always dry in time, even in front of the fire or with one of those things that we get here that you put the shoes and gloves on. I don't know if you've ever seen those. I need to post a picture of that somewhere. They're brilliant. It's like a tiny little hairdryer that you plug in, and it's got a tube, well, lots of tubes actually, usually 4, 8, 16 even, and you put your shoes over the top of it or your gloves, and it sends out this warm air and it dries them off in a few hours, which you need when it gets very wet, and especially if you've got children. So now you have some idea of what first grade is like here in Norway, and I hope that's been interesting and exciting. And if your child is starting first grade, I hope that gives you a little bit of reassurance and you're not quite so worried about what to expect. And if you are here in Norway and you're not sure what to expect, ask. Do ask the school. And if you feel you can't ask the school, you can ask me. You can send me an email if you like. My email address is up just below this. Or you can go onto my website and have a look, which is livinganordiclife.com. And I'll see you in the next episode. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the Living a Nordic Life newsletters so you can get an email when I release a new episode. It's a quick and easy way to keep up with all things Nordic living. Please visit livinganordiclife.com. You can listen to Living a Nordic Life on lots of podcast apps, including Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts, and plenty of others. If you've enjoyed the Living a Nordic Life podcast, why not leave me a rating? So that's the end of Living a Nordic Life for today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.